Hi there, and welcome into Real Conversations, a film podcast that seeks to explore the history of the Reel-to-Reel International Film Festival, presented by the Cleveland County Arts Council. My name is Ashley Luckadoo, and this year, Reel-to-Reel is celebrating 25 years. I'm joined today by Paris Arthur to talk about their work on the film Fall Towards the Heavens, an official selection of Reel-to-Reel 2024. So, all right, let's get into it. So, tell us about what inspired you to make this film and the process of the long endurance of animation.
So, Fall Towards the Heavens started kind of as an amalgamation of a bunch of different concepts I was learning at UNCSA. I had taken a class with a professor that covered Afrofuturism. It was the first time I'd ever actually heard of it as a concept, and I just got extremely deep into it. It was such an interesting way of thinking, such an interesting topic that I really wanted to explore it more and also combine it with the elements that I really like fantasy. And I was able to do that, I feel like, through Atlas as a character, being a cosmic entity and also like this kind of fantastical being based off of Greek myth, which is another passion of mine. So that's kind of how it started to take form. And with the process of animation, having to kind of get all like the visuals figured out before anything can actually be animated, really helped me keep developing and also changing things along the way. Because as a concept and as a process, it can get a little complicated, it can get a little tiring, but I'm honestly really proud with how everything came together in the end.
I mean, it looked good from the storyboards and everything, but seeing it come to life was amazing.
Yeah, going through the different iterations of the animatics and changing things up so that the story flowed like more cleanly. That especially was a task because it went through so many different iterations, just tweaking tiny things and like, oh, the length of this scene should be shorter. Let's switch these shots around. That was a whole process unto itself, and it didn't really stop until the very end, which is kind of par for the course for animation. Um, but I was extremely proud of how like the visual style came together, the elements of trying to make Atlas seem otherworldly. So I made sure he was animated using After Effects and also drawn in a very hyper rendered style as compared to like all the characters who are more like flat and simplistically looking.
It was so cool to see from the process of the storyboards and animatic to, the finished product. So could you talk a little bit about, I guess first we should talk about that we both go to UNCSA. I guess timeline wise, did you start from conception of the idea to like the finished product? Can you talk about like how long this film actually took to make? Because I know it was a long process, but also a short amount of time to get it all done.
Yeah, conception wise, it started about in, I'd have to say the winter or maybe no, spring 2022, I believe.
Wow.
Kind of when I was coming out of that class I was speaking about, learning about Afrofuturism. And then that next semester following, I was able to kind of learn a lot more about script writing because I was taking a script screenwriting for animation class. So that kind of gave me the rails to start typing up this idea that had kind of been like floating in my head and actually gave me uh, like the time to figure it out fully and flesh it out in kind of like a controlled setting where someone was like, maybe you should turn this around and or fix this, et cetera, et cetera. And originally it was supposed to be a dialogueless script. Um, so for that assignment, it was very interesting trying to characterize these people without even like
Yeah.
knowing what they were going to say and without using words. So that was a great process in figuring out, oh, so this is what Nova's character is like. This is what Atlas is like, because Night didn't exist then. Um, it was mainly about Nova and Atlas and the whole process of like the culture and stuff of the city itself was a little more explored in that one, which was really fun to do. And then that all leads up to building my pitch deck for the pitch process for the following year. And then over that summer, I was really trying to flesh out, okay, so this is what Nova really looks like. This is what she's really like. And then figuring out Night, figuring out Atlas, how I wanted him to move and things like that. that was I'm glad I took the summer. And we were just kind of hit the ground running. We had some hiccups because of like, technical issues and things like that. But in the end, I think we did an amazing job of troubleshooting all of it. For like the art to come together with everyone's skills. Some people were still learning, some people knew a lot already. So like making sure everyone was able to kind of get the style down and also have fun with the project. That was really, really something I wanted to focus on as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because I probably should also mention I was one of the sound designers on it, and so that's how I got to see the process. Also you're the director too on this, not just the head animator. I don't think we've
Yeah.
talked about that at the beginning, but now people know. Could you talk about more of the kind of passion behind the story? And also you're talking about this class you took. Could you explain a little bit more about the class?
It was called, Black Feminist Thought.
Oh, okay.
Um, and the class itself, yeah, it was very interesting. I took it with Reagan Mitchell,
Oh, I don't know who
the
Rick.
DLA professor.
Oh, that's why I don't
No?
know. I don't have
Yeah.
DLA. Nice. So, does the class like did it kind of teach the history or just more of the writing process? Because it seemed to be a great class because it turned out to be an amazing film that you got inspired from this class. So, could you talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, that class was amazing, but it wasn't even like a focused Afrofuturism class. That was just like we had watched this film called Sun Ra, which is kind of like the foundational Afrofuturist like text,
Gotcha.
you could say. So that as a whole, and it's kind of has the message of finding a more equitable world beyond Earth, because as a Black person living in America specifically, it's rough out here. Um, so the idea of Afrofuturism is kind of finding, at least the one I wanted to focus on was finding a better world, a better life for yourself beyond like the confines of what society has like decided that Black people should be and Black people should do. Um,
Well, that's a beautiful
and that
message.
was something that really stuck, resonated.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think
Um,
you
because I
successfully
had
did
already like
that in the film. I think you really portrayed, that message in the film. And I think it turned out beautiful. I mean, it was very touching and great.
I had also been reading some Octavia Butler. I started reading her when I was in high school, and then I kind of picked her back up after that class because she also had like a big hand in kind of forming uh, Black people and aliens as like a concept and genre together, which is so it's very fun.
Cool. So I guess because I think the film ended up with like 5 or 6 lines in the whole film. Is that right? Or somewhere around there? Yeah, and I feel like you conveyed the story through like amazing detail and action without just the like 5 6 words in the whole film. And the film is quite short too. And
Yeah.
I feel like you did such a wonderful job. Was there any point where you were kind of afraid that you weren't going to convey the message to the audiences that you wanted? Was it more of like the trust
Yes.
process, or was it like, oh, I know exactly how this is going to go from the beginning?
It was a mixture of the two because like I knew exactly how it was going to go from the beginning, but no one else did. Until I had like the animatic out. Like they understood what the script was, but I think the real trouble was translating the script to like visuals.
Yeah.
Because with the animatic, there were some stages where it got a bit just because it's more rough sketches and stuff like that. So adding the colors in and having everything in made it so people understood what was happening. But that middle stage had me, it was stressed, it was stressful because I wasn't entirely sure like what else I could do except for like going through and rendering the entire animatic that would make them understand this is what it's going to look like. This is what the vision is. So I just had to be like, trust me, trust
Yeah.
me. Um,
Yeah.
and they did.
Yeah, I mean, like I working on the film, like I knew that you had your solid vision, and I just knew that like if I stuck with what you were telling me, then it was gonna turn out well, and it did. So, and he seemed happy with the sound work that I did. So Yeah. So you're the director and head animator. So was there a time when like you were feeling like overwhelmed with both roles that you just kind of were like, "Oh my gosh, this is driving me crazy that I'm doing all this." Or did you kind of like having that creative control and, all this also animating it too? How did you go about that?
Lots of planning and trying to make sure that everyone had like their schedules, everyone knew what was being assigned to them essentially, especially on the animation side, where it was like weekly assignments, you're doing this much work, and you have this much time to do it. When they like ran into like speed bumps while I was also focusing on like, oh, I have to get this or composer note, or I have to have a meeting with my producer. And they're having like a technical issue with like, oh, Toon Boom's not working. But sometimes we run into speed bumps along the way, and having to juggle that together was a bit difficult at first because I know some of my crew members, they were trying to figure it out themselves, and in trying to do that, it took way longer than it should have, like if they had reached out to me. So we had discussions about that in the beginning, and we were kind of able to nip it in the bud because I would rather be over communicated with than under communicated with. Uh, so a lot of those issues were helpfully or thankfully figured out in the beginning. But of course, going through in the middle when it's crunch time as well, trying to figure out, okay, how fast can you get this done? Are you able to complete this in the time that I need it to be? Because when it comes down to crunch, it gets very hectic. So, and as the director, I didn't feel comfortable kind of throwing a gigantic workload onto people this like close to the end. So a lot of it, I kind of just had to take a step back and be like, okay, here's what I can feasibly do without putting pressure on my crew. Because in the end, I want them to remember this happily. So I didn't want to overstep on their bounds or anything either. So that's mainly with my animation people, working with, my editor, my composer, Hannah Mafuka, my editor, Destiny Dow's. Let me shout out the names.
Oh
You
yeah.
as my sound designer, along with Molly Gill, my
Molly too.
producer, Joshua Robinson. Yeah. Everyone worked really really hard, and you guys actually helped me. You guys made it easy for me not to have to worry like intensely about everything because you all knew what you were doing.
It's all about
Yeah.
confidence. Honestly, a lot of us didn't know what we were doing, but we were confident that we'd get it done. So at least that was Molly and I's mentality. Yeah, but we all had a good time, and again, like with your vision, I mean, we knew to trust you and to do the notes that you were giving us, and it all came together. So, how was working with specifically with the composer, Hannah? So, how was that relationship? Because since there's not a lot of dialogue, you have to kind of present the feelings and emotions through score and also, I guess, sound too. Shout out to little old me and Molly. But how was working with specifically with Hannah with her music?
Working with Hannah was a great experience. I had heard a lot about her work, and I also like I know Hannah. We'd hung out like a lot. We're friends. And so being able to work with a friend, I was a bit nervous about it at first because, mixing business and friendship sometimes doesn't go well. But working with Hannah kind of like threw that thought process out the window because as a composer, Hannah is definitely up to different challenges. What I had wanted for the score of this film was a bit out of Hannah's wheelhouse initially, but Hannah took it as a challenge, which was amazing to see because I was going for more of like more of a technical sound, lots of like effects rather than actual like musical instruments, which Hannah was like, bet synths, so many synths. Um, so yeah, and being someone who isn't like fully versed in musical like, language and stuff, Hannah was able to kind of decipher what I was trying to say because I would be like in emails, okay, Hannah, I would like it to sound more like a bum, banana, bum, bum, and I would actually type out the sound effect. And Hannah was like, oh, we want it to sound like this. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. And then next meeting, it would be like, yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah, I mean, Hannah is just such a
Mhm.
wonderful person in general. And so she's worked on like two or three of my films too. And I actually so she was actually someone who did music for one of my films first, and then we became friends through the process. She's just such a cool,
I
chill person. And how her brain works, I feel like it's similar with how I see animation. It's like it's a superpower to be able like, how do you do that in your head? Wild. So I'm glad to hear
exactly.
that was such a cool and smooth relationship. And I think with your work and her work together, it just works so perfectly. I mean, I think it really helped the story come to life. With the showing to audiences at the festival and hopefully to a lot more, what kind of takeaway do you want audiences to leave with your film?
I want them to leave with the knowledge that systems and life in general cannot be built on the backs of other people. Kind of the understanding that if you want to kind of live an actually fulfilled and free life, you kind of have to do it in community with other people rather than in hierarchy with them. So that's what I would hope that they take away.
Do you have any advice for aspiring filmmakers, specifically with people who are wanting to go into animation?
Um, Keep drawing, keep going, never stop. And I know it's extremely cliche advice, but especially where we're at now, currently, as like animation and as an industry, you really cannot afford to let go of your spark. Because no matter where you end up, no matter what paths you end up taking, that should always be your home. Um, to kind of find a place to land, you can land in like your creative spirit. Um, so so long as you're able to keep creating, so long as you're able to feel passionate about your work, you've got it. And you just have to go forward.
That is great advice. Is there a place audiences can follow you on like social media or anything?
Most definitely. It's my Instagram, BIRDIEEEART on Instagram.
Beautiful. Amazing. Do check her out. So thank you for joining us, and thank you, Paris, for coming on Real Conversations podcast. You can check out Real to Real Film Festival July 24th through the 27th. Tickets are on sale now online or purchase them at the Cleveland County Arts Council in Shelby. And thank you. We'll see you next time.